Y'all planning for this?
I got so many questions about employment with Shalansky & Associates from financial advisors all across the country, just like you, either single practitioners or multi-enterprise advisor offices looking for tips and suggestions of how they harmonize their staff and really establish those roles for employees. As we've talked in these episodes on Worlds to Conquer about a lot of team dynamic aspects, I've gotten tons and tons of questions about how we organize things in our RIA, Shalansky & Associates. So I'm going to take you through in this episode a career pathway with our firm. That way you can hear about how we outline the different pods, and then also maybe rip off and deploy some of the tactics that we use in order to keep our team members really vetted in the growth of our company and how we organize that. So we'll be diving into, in this episode, career pathways. I'm really big on, when you onboard a new team member, making sure that they understand that the office has different modalities and there are different roles. And I like people to be cross-trained, but I also like them to stay in their lane, right? So there's a harmony between those two. And I also want them to be in a perpetual state of learning. I want their growth. I want it so bad that I've outlined exactly what they need to do in order to continue to grow in their own role, develop new skills, and then also where they can blossom and go from there. And the reason that I've done this is so many times I found in business that when I talk to people that are looking for a different job change, one of the primary reasons that they're leaving their current employer is because they plateau. They feel that they've learned everything that they can in that position, or they say these words: there's nowhere else for me to go, right? How many times have you talked to maybe even a client or a friend or somebody at a neighborhood barbecue where they're talking about a new job and they say, yep, I just felt it was time because there was nowhere else I could have gone, right? They had reached what they felt was the pinnacle of their career ladder wherever they were formerly employed. Well, I don't want that. I want employees that have been with me for 20 plus years, and I don't ever want them plateauing. I want them in a perpetual state of growth, but I also realize that they don't know how to achieve that. And so I've got to set up these different pods, and then I've got to give them a career path and really outline where they can go in their own personal careers, because they want that too, right? So in our RIA, we have different pods. So we have the financial advisors. We've got 5 financial advisors. We do not break down into individual staffs for each advisor. So instead, we have a pod of relationship managers and we have a pod of operations personnel. And what's really important about that is that we did it, we've had the benefit of Shalansky & Associates being in existence for over 40 years. My mom and dad started the company and they did a phenomenal job. As they grew, and at one time, I think they had like a dozen financial advisors working for them. And then each financial advisor had a service assistant and a sales assistant that worked underneath them. That was the model in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. What we found in our particular instance was that it really created a competitive environment and didn't bring the company together as a whole. And so, for example, if a client called in for Bob, another financial advisor, and we, maybe it was one of my team members that were available. Oh, Jamie's team member can take it. The team member would be like, sorry, no, that's Bob's client. I'm not taking that phone call. So it was doing such an incredible disservice to our clientele because not everyone was playing nice. Bob had his clients, Jamie had her clients, etc. And so we wanted to abolish that way of doing things and create synergy where the clients are being delivered massive value all the time, no matter who they talk to in our organization. For us, that meant podding our different groups instead of isolating them to one particular advisor that they work with. Now, most of our financial advisors also have executive assistants. Those can be individual people that work with them on the one-off tasks, but they are not the people that work with the clients collectively as a whole necessarily. So as we go through this, we've got our financial advisors. Financial advisor might have an executive assistant. That executive assistant would be in charge of like scheduling, coordination, and all of those things that happen outside in the advisor's world that somebody else needs to take care of. Flights, continuing education classes, and scheduling the car to have maintenance, all of those tasks that we can outsource to somebody else so that the financial advisor can work on what they do best, which is delivering massive value to clients. And then second, we have our relationship managers. And as you've heard me talk about before, relationship managers are responsible for the relationship maturity of the client or prospect with the firm. They're people. That is what they handle. That is how they operate. And in our office, relationship managers handle all clients, not just a particular set of clients that belong to a certain financial advisor. We might be open to changing that in the future. We've done it before, it didn't work. We switched to the pods. The pods have been working out very successfully because clients can call in and anyone can assist them instead of waiting for somebody of a particular advisor group. Not to say that we won't shift that later if we think it's necessary, but that's how we have things set up today. And then we have our operations team. And our operations team is responsible for the movement of money. So these are not people, even though they think probably customer service is one of their strongest qualities. It is not. They are really good at details, but man, they cannot read a room. And they're awkward in conversation oftentimes. So we have our operations team members too. So we've got these 3 different pods and we all have got to work in harmony. So the financial advisors, we find they're kind of self-starters and they know what is required, for them to maintain their license. They know what's required for them to maintain their designations like RFC or CFP. And so they'll go knock out their continuing education as much as possible. Some of our juniors, we outline additional courses that maybe aren't covered in a CFP or RFC program. And that's like body language, right? Or Sullivan's course, or things that you don't normally get inside of your regular anti-money laundering senior abuse courses for financial advisors. So we'll outline some of those for the financial advisor, and they'll mentor up with another senior advisor in our office to get that type of education. One thing that's required of all of our team members, except for financial advisors, because their designations and license will disqualify them from needing this, is that regardless if you are a relationship manager or if you're an operations person, after the first year of employment with our company, you have to get your what was previously called the registered paraplanner course done, but today it's called the Financial Paraplanner Qualified Professional Examination. The reason that we require this of employees is because I want to accomplish a couple of things. One, I want them to understand what financial planning is in its concept and design. And this particular course will teach about the financial planning process. It'll talk about cash management as well as the use of debt, so some things that are very applicable to them in their own lives. It'll also give them time value of money calculations to start learning so they can start understanding, in particular, why we as financial advisors are always asking about cash flow and goals and projected expenses, etc. It'll give very basic knowledge on insurance. That includes property insurance as well as life and health and disability. It's got a whole section on life and health, so it'll really kind of dive into those two in particular, but we'll talk about all insurances. It will talk about investment basics, very remedial level, but enough for them to understand, okay, this is what these different terminology means, these concepts, and why it matters so much, as well as different strategies. It'll talk about retirement planning, tax implications of financial decisions. This one's significant, right? Because, think about how many real world examples where a client calls in and says, hey, I need $10,000 out of my IRA. Can you go ahead and disperse that? Well, most of the time, that's going to go right over to an operations person, and the operations person is going to clarify with the financial advisor. But knowing, does the client want gross or net? How much needs to be withheld? What are the penalties of taking that money out? And what are other options instead of maybe accessing a retirement account? So, a lot of really good material inside of there. Estate planning basics. This is one that drives home to everyone, right? It doesn't matter how affluent the client is, and making sure that the employee understands that. And then it also gives a couple of case studies. So I really like them to have this elementary knowledge of financial planning, if you will, because it sets the tone for things that they should be thinking about in their own life. But then it also gives them a glimpse behind the curtain of what we're talking about. A lot of times, all my personnel that take this go, wow, there's a lot that goes into building a financial plan. I now get why you asked me to go get so much information from the client. And it gives them just that glimpse of insight into building out that financial plan and why we want so much information and why we ask the questions and how those questions have ramifications into other things. The other thing I love about this is it's a stranger in uniform. This isn't me sitting down and teaching him the financial planning process. I call it the stranger in the uniform rule because if your spouse is anything like mine, the first 6 months, they swore I knew everything and was a great source of information. But once you get further into your relationship with that person, they then think that you don't know anything. But if a complete stranger tells them information and that stranger is in a uniform or some sense of authority, then of course, then that is the exact answer that they were looking for. So I like the stranger in uniform. Gives them a third party, not just me giving them this information and advice, and it gives them a resource to go back to. The last element that I really like about them having to go get this designation is now it's also a certification for them. So whether they stay in our practice for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they now have something. They have a certificate that they have to maintain and they have to continue to do. I think this one requires about 20 to 40 hours of continuing education every year. And so they have a reason that they have to now go get knowledge in order to maintain this certificate. And once they've got this designation, I've also started them off when they start with our company. We don't go through a first year's raise. I set really good expectations about when pay is going to be increased. And it's not based on somebody's first year or time in service with us. It's based on their knowledge and the value that they can bring to the organization. So after the first year, they have to enroll in this course and get it. It could take them a whole year to finish out this examination. I will pay for the course. I will pay for the exam one time, and they will also get a paid day of leave for the exam on the exam day. Other than that, I don't give them any time off to go study for this because this is something that is a job requirement, and I want them to also know that it's got to be a priority for them outside of work as well. And so really kind of setting that foundation that their continued education, their knowledge is in their hands and they're empowered to go and get that. And then after they've passed this exam successfully, that's when we go through our first pay raise. And so I'll give them probably a 5 to 10% bump in pay after they've completed this examination. When the certificate comes in, I will make a very big deal of it. They can get a copy for their house, but then I want a copy in our office on the wall with everyone else. And then if I'm onboarding new personnel, I'll have a couple of frames that are up there, empty slots. And so it sets the expectation that when somebody else joins our practice, they too have to go get those designations. And then those designations will slide right into the case that we already have set up for them. So really like this sense of camaraderie. And I love how interdepartment wise, everyone talks to everyone like, oh my gosh, I really struggled with this module. I'm not getting the time value of money calculations. Oh, well, if you can learn this basic, it'll really help you with investments when you get to that section, and they've created this dialogue and this synergy and things that they now get to relate to one another about because everyone has to do this. So love it. And like I said, relationship managers and operations personnel have to take it and pass it successfully during their second year of employment. So first year, they cannot take it. If they want to purchase the study material or borrow it from another team member and start studying ahead of time, great. I don't pay for it until after 1 year of employment. After that 1 year of employment, they've got to pay. And this puts them in charge of their next pay raise, right? And so they're no longer questioning, him and hawing, or wondering when they can come to me and ask for a pay raise. They're in charge of it. Your next pay raise is tied to your direct value that you bring to the organization. Having this certification brings value to the organization and gives you more insight, and they're eager to go do it. So I love it. All right. And then I have 3 different levels for each one of those pods. So, level 3 starts out as kind of basic, level 2 is intermediate, and a level 1 is a master. And then I outline everything that they should be learning in those positions. And for my super ambitious people, I need to also set good timeline expectations that in order for them to learn the basic levels of being a relationship manager, that doesn't mean that they're going to have those under their belt for the first year. This is a position that you could be at for 2 to 5 years until you have a master mastery of it. And then in order for them to apply to go up a position, to go to that next level, one, it's got to be available. We got to have an open slot for it. They can't even think about applying until they've had a year of service underneath them, even if they're coming to me with other industry experience. They still have to learn my way. And so they've got to have 1 year of service underneath them. They've got to show a mastery level of all the tasks that were outlined in their job description. And so that means no incidences, no negative reporting. They know the how to do their job and why it matters. So really, really important, not just the how, but they also got to know the why. And then they've got to have their supervisor sign off on it before they turn their form into me to be considered for it. So this now puts it in the hands of one of the leads. So I have a lead in the our relationship manager, and I have a lead on my operations side. And so the employee would have to go to their lead respective of their department in order to say, okay, I'm ready to go to that next level. I'm ready to take on these different tasks. And then you got to outline it. You need to spend some time outlining what your expectations are for everyone in those different levels. And, for my operations team, you could start with opening new accounts and doing address updates and changes, right? But in order to show like a mastery of it, you've got to be able to do all those tasks plus maybe, recharacterizations, transfers of annuity, understanding illustrations. You've really got to, they can't give advice, right? Because they're not licensed to do that, but they have to now have this mastery of what they're looking for, not just a task being performed. Because by the time that a client brings a problem, suggestion, question to the table, I want my team members to already have thought through a couple of solutions and come to me with the full information, right? So, and this is as simple as a client saying, hey, we're going to buy a house and I need 20% down out of my retirement account. I want my employee to already pump the brakes on that and say that they need to get a call with a financial advisor and then really set up expectations of what the tax ramifications are doing that, what are the different strategies we should employ, etc. And by the time that they have this mastery, they'll have gathered all of that information. So when I'm on the phone with the client, I'm already seeing everything. They've got me a whole complete snapshot, and I'm not trying to make offhand advice from just one little sliver. But there's no way for them to know that if I haven't articulated what I need them to understand about the task that's being asked. So making sure that we outline them, and it gives them a checklist like, oh yeah, I felt I had a mastery in this department because I've been doing it for 5 to 7 years, but nope, I've never done an annuity, and then it says, oh, I guess I do need to go learn those things, right? I've never set up a 401k for an employer before. What do I need to go learn in those? And the same thing with the relationship managers. We can start off on a very basic level of them being able to navigate proprietary softwares, them to have a mastery of calendars, and them to be able to book appointments. But by the end of this, I want them to really have an in-depth knowledge when they've reached a master level of behavioral science as well. And so I want them to pick up on the expressed and unexpressed desires of the client. I want them to read body language and to understand if there's an area of tension or opportunity or excitement. And I want them to be really, really in tune with our client and simultaneously also learning the restrictions of our industry, right? We can't just go out and get clients box seats to the Knicks because that's their favorite sporting event. We have limitations on our gift giving and our gift reporting in particular, right? So I want them to have an understanding of those compliance features, but also a mastery of the behavioral science behind it, right? We don't always have to go above and beyond and get those Knicks tickets. Instead, if a client goes through surgery, we can send them a package of coloring books, word puzzles, crosswords, things to do while they're sitting around in those moments of boredom, and maybe spend 10 or 15 bucks and have a dramatic, impact on the client because we were thinking of them in that moment. So really important to stress to them. And there's no way for them to know those things until we go through compliance courses together, but making that opportunity available for them. And then I've also talked a little bit before about, if you remember, our conference, our professional development budget. Every year, every single employee gets a professional development budget. And not only do they get the opportunity to spend that through Audible, through university classes, through online programs, or traveling to a conference like XYPN or FPA in person. But they also get suggestions from one of their mentors. One of the things that I found very early on is that if I gave employees a professional development bonus and no instruction, they had no idea how to use it. None. And so for a long time, because for me on the finances side of my practice, I treat that professional development bonus like a monthly bill. And so all my employees divide out their, in 2022, my professional development bonus is $3,500. So divide out $3,500, and every month I put that into a separate account for cash flow called professional development. So when one of them uses it, they use those funds and it's already set aside for it. And one of the things I found was one year I was like, man, I've only had like 2 people out of 13 using their professional development. Something must be wrong here. So we sat down and we created, I started asking everyone's like, yeah, I didn't really know what to attend. I wasn't sure what to learn. I wasn't sure where to go with this, etc. I said, okay, clearly we need an individual lesson plan created. So had a big web meeting with all my team, said, let's create individual lesson plans every single year. As a financial advisor, that's something we do with our coaches, right? We sit down at the last quarter of the former year and we say, what do we want to accomplish? What do we want to go do next year? Then we draw out the strategy of how we're going to go achieve those things. So taking each one of our team members and really to creating an individual lesson plan catered to them, and then saying, okay, great. You want to learn about employer retirement accounts. Here's 3 different books you should read, and here's 4 different courses. You pick as many as you can fit in your budget. And what I've also found is that sometimes employees will spend some of their own money to go do this. So if you want to retain talent within your company, and I love the word talent, right? Because it's like, oh, everyone's looking for talent. I was like, what is this, a reality show? Are they going to come up here and tap dance, sing, entertain me? No, I'm looking for good, honest, hardworking people that want to go conquer the world. Are we calling that talent nowadays? Fine, then I'm looking for talent. But when you do this, if you want to create an atmosphere of continued education and longevity of working with your firm, and then also an environment where employees don't feel that they're plateauing or getting burned out in their careers because they have nowhere else to go, you've got to create these job specifications, roles, and goals. And they've got to be smart, right? And when I talk about smart, sometimes we use this in coaching, and it really breaks it down and says, okay, if we were being smart about this, then we're going to make sure that our goals are specific, they're measurable, they're agreeable, right? Where the employee and employer have to agree on them. They're realistic, and they're timely. They can actually be achieved. I'm not just telling them to go get your doctorate. We're coming up with real goals that have tangible results attracted to them. So if you're ever, sitting down with your employee and trying to figure out on your individual lesson plan, remember that SMART format, right? Specific, measurable, agreeable, realistic, and timely, and get the goals done. You want to retain talent, then this is how you do it. You show them how they grow with you, and they will rise to the occasion.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.